Something significant is happening geopolitically right now. If you've been following the news around Iran, you already know that the situation has grown more serious than it has been in quite some time, decades perhaps. This isn't a video designed to frighten you. It isn't meant to send you spiraling into anxiety or make you feel like the world is ending tonight. What it is meant to do is give you practical, grounded information, the kind that helps real families make smart decisions before a situation gets out of hand. Here's what history consistently shows us. When military tensions escalate into open conflict, grocery store supply chains don't gradually wind down, they snap. The disruption is fast, it's uneven, and it disproportionately affects people who weren't paying attention in the early hours. Over the past 50 years, researchers, journalists, and supply chain analysts have documented what happens to consumer goods during periods of military conflict, or the credible threat of one: the Gulf War, the Iraq invasion, the Libya crisis, the Ukraine conflict. Each situation had unique causes and political dimensions, but the consumer behavior pattern that followed was strikingly consistent every time. Buying surges begin within hours of the first credible headline, not days, hours. Within roughly 3 days, the items most people reach for instinctively are gone. Within a week, stores in affected regions begin implementing purchase restrictions. Prices climb even when shelves still have product, because retailers adjust to anticipated supply costs before the supply actually drops. You're likely watching this during what could be described as an early window. The situation with Iran is serious enough that this conversation is worth having, but shelves in most areas are still stocked. Prices haven't moved dramatically yet. That may not be true in 48 hours. That's why we're having this conversation now, calmly and practically, so that you can make informed decisions rather than reactive ones. What follows is a list of foods and pantry staples that have historically disappeared fastest during supply disruptions related to military conflict. We'll explain why each one matters, what quantity makes sense for most households, what you can expect to pay, and how to store it properly. This isn't about hoarding or creating artificial scarcity. It's about making sure your household is among those that are prepared rather than scrambling. Let's go through each one carefully. 1. White rice. If there is a single staple that vanishes from store shelves faster than anything else during any supply disruption, whether that's a natural disaster, a pandemic, or a geopolitical conflict, it is white rice. The reason is straightforward. White rice is the most affordable source of calories available in the average grocery store. It requires nothing beyond water and a heat source to prepare. It has a familiar taste that people across all cultural backgrounds are comfortable cooking. And it stores for an exceptionally long time when sealed properly, up to 25 to 30 years in ideal conditions. When the Ukraine conflict began, some grocery stores in the United States reported their rice shelves being cleared within 48 hours, not because of a supply problem, because of a perception of potential future scarcity. That's how quickly the pattern sets in. Now consider what an Iran conflict specifically introduces. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most strategically important waterways in the world. Approximately 20% of the world's oil supply passes through that narrow channel. A disruption there, even a partial one, even a threatened one, causes immediate ripple effects in global energy markets. When oil prices rise sharply, transportation costs rise with them. Almost everything in your grocery store arrived there on a diesel-powered truck. Fuel cost increases are passed along to consumers almost immediately. Rice, which already sells on thin margins, becomes more expensive quickly, and retailers begin to worry about restocking timelines. That combination of rising prices and uncertain restocking is exactly what triggers consumer panic buying. White rice is your calorie foundation. It pairs with nearly everything else on this list. It can be eaten alone, dressed up with spices, combined with beans for complete nutrition, or used as a base for dozens of simple meals. Buying 50 to 100 pounds of white rice tonight will cost you roughly $25 to $50 at most grocery retailers. Store it in sealed food-grade buckets with oxygen absorbers, if possible. A lidded bin in a cool, dry space is adequate for a year or two at minimum. This is the first thing you buy. Everything else comes after. 2. Vanish, cooking oil. This is the item most people forget. It's also frequently the first one to disappear, because by the time people realize they need it, the visible staples like rice and canned goods are already being swept and oil is quietly gone alongside them. Cooking oil is deeply tied to international shipping. The Middle East serves as a major transit corridor for cooking oils produced in parts of Asia and Africa. When shipping insurance rates rise, which they do almost instantly when military conflict in the region becomes likely, carriers either reroute or stop running certain lanes entirely. Rerouting around Africa adds weeks to delivery times. That lag eventually hits store shelves. We saw a clear version of this with sunflower oil during the Ukraine conflict. Because Ukraine and Russia together supplied the majority of the world's sunflower oil, the conflict caused near immediate global shortages. Shelves in multiple countries were wiped out within days. Prices on alternative oils like vegetable and canola rose sharply in response as demand shifted. You need cooking oil for almost everything. Rice requires it. Beans are more palatable with it. Flatbreads need it. High-calorie density survival meals depend on it. Without oil, your ability to stretch other ingredients into satisfying, calorie-rich meals drops significantly. 10 bottles of whatever oil is available, vegetable, canola, coconut, or olive, will run you approximately $40 to $60 and give you months of cooking capability. Unopened oil lasts 1 to 2 years without any special storage requirements. Once opened, use it within a few months for best quality. Buy this second, right after rice. 3. Canned protein: tuna, chicken, salmon, Spam. Protein is the second category to disappear after carbohydrates. This has been true in every documented panic buying event in American history. The sequence in stores typically looks like this. Fresh meat goes first. People clear the refrigerated meat aisle almost on instinct. Within 12 to 24 hours of that, canned protein follows. Tuna, canned chicken, salmon, Spam, canned beef, all of it gets swept relatively quickly because it becomes the obvious substitute for fresh meat once that section is empty. What makes a conflict scenario worse than a hurricane or even a pandemic from a supply chain perspective is the timeline. Natural disasters disrupt supply chains locally and temporarily. Global military conflict disrupts supply chains at the source, and that disruption can persist for months or even years. Fishing fleets modify their routes when conflict affects major waterways. Processing facilities in various regions lose workers or access to inputs. Container shipping gets disrupted. The canned tuna that disappears in week 1 may not be consistently restocked for a very long time. 30 to 50 cans, mixing varieties, tuna, chicken, salmon, and Spam, will cost you approximately $50 to $100 and provide a reliable protein source with a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. No cooking is required, no refrigeration is needed. Open the can, eat the contents, move on. If you're finding this information useful, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment below about what you're planning to stock up on, and subscribe so you'll receive updates as the situation develops. Every bit of engagement helps this reach people who need it. 4. Dry beans and lentils. Dry beans and lentils serve a specific and important role that canned goods cannot fully replace. They are your long-term protein source, the backup after the canned goods run out, and in a prolonged conflict, the canned goods will eventually run out. Dry beans cost between $0.01 and $1.50 per pound, depending on variety and retailer. They have shelf lives measured in decades when stored in sealed containers away from moisture. When combined with rice, they create a nutritionally complete protein source, which is why rice and beans have been the dietary foundation of populations across the world for centuries. Lentils in particular are worth highlighting because they cook significantly faster than other legumes, 15 to 20 minutes versus an hour or more for kidney beans or pintos. In a situation where fuel is scarce or expensive, that time difference translates directly to resource savings. Less propane burned, less water boiled away. Faster meals when conditions are difficult. Think of your canned protein as covering the first 1 to 2 months of a disruption. Your dry beans cover month 3 through 12 and beyond. 20 to 30 pounds of mixed beans and lentils costs under $30. That's long-term nutritional security for less than the cost of a single restaurant dinner. 5. NOS sugar. Sugar has been officially rationed during every major military conflict in American history. World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Each involved government-level management of sugar supply because demand consistently outpaced what distribution networks could handle. The mechanism is the same now as it was then. Sugar production is geographically concentrated, and the supply chain that moves it is heavily dependent on global shipping. Any significant disruption to shipping lanes affects sugar delivery timelines. Import volumes drop, prices rise, retailers begin limiting quantities, and then consumer behavior amplifies the scarcity. Beyond its obvious culinary uses, sugar serves some less discussed but important functions in a preparedness context. It provides fast energy during physical or psychological stress. It's a critical ingredient in home canning and food preservation. Mixed with salt and water in the right proportions, it contributes to oral rehydration solution, which is potentially life-saving in cases of dehydration. Stored dry in sealed containers, sugar lasts indefinitely. It doesn't go rancid. It doesn't lose potency. 20 to 30 pounds costs under $20 at most retailers. Throughout wartime economies, historically, sugar became something people were willing to trade for because the comfort and utility it provided was genuinely valued. Buy it while it costs almost nothing. That condition may not last. 6. Peanut butter. Peanut butter occupies a unique position on this list because it requires absolutely nothing to eat. No cooking, no water, no heat source, no preparation. Open the jar, consume the contents. That characteristic becomes critical in a conflict scenario where fuel costs spike immediately. The moment Middle East tensions escalate, gasoline prices begin to climb, propane follows. Every energy source people use for cooking becomes more expensive and less reliably available. In that environment, any food that requires zero fuel to prepare becomes dramatically more valuable than it otherwise would be. A single jar of peanut butter contains roughly 2,000 calories. It provides protein, healthy fats, and sustained energy. A spoonful stirred into rice doubles the caloric density of that meal. Mixed into oats, it creates a genuinely filling breakfast. Eaten straight from the jar, it provides real comfort during stressful circumstances, which shouldn't be dismissed as a frivolous consideration, because psychological stability during a crisis genuinely matters. 10 to 15 jars costs $30 to $50. Peanut butter has a shelf life of 1 to 2 years unopened, longer if stored in a cool location. Buy more than you think you need. This is one of the first items that gets cleared once people start thinking practically rather than instinctively. 7. Oats. Oats are to breakfast what rice is to dinner, the most fuel-efficient, calorie-dense, easy-to-prepare option available. In a situation where your propane tank is running low and you don't know when you'll be able to get more, the difference between a 2-minute cooking time and a 20-minute cooking time matters enormously. Old-fashioned rolled oats require very little cooking. A short simmer or even just hot water poured over them is sufficient. Compare that to rice, which needs 20 minutes of active boiling, or dry beans, which require an hour or more. When fuel is a resource you're managing carefully, oats stretch your reserves further than almost anything else. Nutritionally, oats are excellent. A single pound contains roughly 1,700 calories and significant protein and fiber content. They can be prepared sweet, with honey, sugar, or dried fruit, or savory, with broth and salt. They can even be ground into flour for simple flatbreads. They're versatile in a way that most survival staples aren't. 20 to 30 pounds of rolled oats costs under $50. Stored in sealed containers away from moisture, they keep for 3 to 5 years easily. A month of fuel-efficient breakfasts for your entire household for under $50 is a genuinely strong value proposition. 8. Salt. Salt is the oldest preserved food ingredient in human civilization, and there's a reason governments throughout history have controlled its supply during wartime. It is essential for food preservation, for human physiological function, and for military logistics. When refrigeration becomes unreliable, which it can during extended power grid strain from wartime energy disruptions, salt becomes the method by which meat and vegetables are preserved. Dry salting, brining, and pickling are all techniques humans relied on exclusively before electricity existed. They still work, they require salt. Beyond preservation, salt is essential for basic health. Sodium and chloride are electrolytes that your body requires for nerve and muscle function. In a stressful, physically demanding situation, people can deplete electrolytes faster than usual, and without them, physical and mental performance deteriorates. Salt never expires. It costs approximately 50 cents per pound at most stores. 30 to 50 pounds costs under $25. It takes up minimal space. There is genuinely no downside to buying more of it than you think you need. If conflict doesn't materialize, you've spent $25 on something you'll eventually use anyway. If it does, you'll be very glad it's there. We're halfway through this list, and if you're still watching, it's worth pausing here. Please like this video if it's been helpful so far, subscribe to stay informed as this situation evolves, and drop a comment below telling us your location and whether your local stores are already showing any signs of early buying. That kind of real-time information helps everyone in this community. 9. Coffee and tea. The framing here matters. This isn't primarily about comfort, though comfort is genuinely valuable during stressful periods. This is about managing a physiological reality that affects a very large portion of the adult population. Over 60% of American adults consume caffeine daily and have done so consistently enough to develop a genuine physical dependency. Caffeine withdrawal is not a minor inconvenience. Within 48 hours of stopping regular caffeine intake, symptoms typically include severe headaches, pronounced fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and mood disruption. In a situation where you need to be alert, make good decisions, and take care of your household, being functionally impaired by caffeine withdrawal is a real problem. Coffee is overwhelmingly an imported product. The supply chain that brings it to American shelves runs through shipping lanes that are directly affected by global conflict. Coffee prices spiked during every major conflict of the past century. During World War II, coffee was officially rationed in the United States to 1 cup per adult per day. Instant coffee is the most practical option for a preparedness context. It stores for years without degradation, requires only hot water, and goes further per gram than ground coffee. Tea bags have an even longer shelf life and serve the same caffeine delivery function. 5 to 10 canisters of instant coffee or equivalent tea, costing $30 to $60, provides months of daily use. This isn't a luxury. It's a practical decision about keeping your household functional. 10. Honey. Honey is the most versatile item on this list and the one with the most remarkable storage properties. Archaeologists have found honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that was still chemically intact thousands of years later. Properly sealed honey does not expire, not in decades, not in centuries. Effectively, not at all. But honey's value in a conflict preparedness context extends well beyond its shelf life. Raw honey has documented antimicrobial properties. Applied topically to wounds, it inhibits bacterial growth and supports healing, a meaningful capability when pharmacies are overwhelmed, supply chains for pharmaceutical products are disrupted, or medical care is harder to access. As a food, honey provides fast energy, approximately 60 calories per tablespoon, and suppresses coughs more effectively than many standard over-the-counter syrups. It adds palatability to foods that would otherwise become monotonous after days or weeks of repetition. Morale matters in sustained, difficult situations, and something as simple as honey in your tea or on your oats can have a meaningful positive effect on psychological state. Much of the honey sold in American stores is imported from Argentina, Brazil, India, Vietnam, and other countries whose shipping routes could be affected by conflict-related disruptions. Domestic honey production in the United States has been declining due to colony collapse and other environmental pressures, meaning domestic supply cannot simply absorb the gap created by import disruptions. 5 to 10 pounds of honey, ideally stored in glass jars with tight-fitting lids, costs between $30 and $70. It will outlast nearly any conflict timeline you could reasonably anticipate. In a barter or trade economy, which historically emerges during extended supply disruptions, honey consistently ranks among the most desired items because it represents sweetness, medicine, and comfort simultaneously. 11. Powdered milk. This is an addition that doesn't always appear on preparedness lists, but belongs on this one. Fluid milk is among the most perishable items in any grocery store. When supply chains are disrupted, fresh dairy is one of the earliest casualties. Refrigerated trucks stop running regularly, distribution becomes inconsistent, and within days the dairy aisle is either empty or unreliable. Powdered milk solves this problem entirely. It stores for 2 to 5 years in sealed packaging at room temperature. It reconstitutes with water into usable milk. It provides calcium, protein, and fat that are genuinely important for both adults and especially children in a household. For families with young children, the absence of milk is more than an inconvenience. Growing children need consistent calcium intake, and in a situation where normal food variety is already constrained, having a reliable source of dairy nutrition matters more than it usually would. 20 to 30 pounds of powdered milk costs approximately $50 to $80, depending on brand and retailer. Sealed properly in a cool, dry location, it maintains quality for years. This is particularly worth prioritizing if you have children or elderly family members who rely on dairy nutrition. 12. Apple cider vinegar and distilled white vinegar. Vinegar is rarely mentioned in preparedness conversations, but it earns a place here because of how many different problems it solves. Like salt, vinegar is a food preservation agent. It's used in pickling vegetables to extend their shelf life from days to months or even years without refrigeration. If your household has a garden or access to fresh produce, vinegar allows you to preserve that produce through simple pickling. Cucumbers, onions, carrots, peppers, green beans, almost any vegetable can be pickled in a basic brine and stored without refrigeration for months. Beyond food preservation, vinegar is a powerful cleaning and sanitizing agent. Apple cider vinegar, in particular, has a long history of use as a home remedy for digestive issues, sore throats, and minor skin irritations. It's not a pharmaceutical substitute, but in a situation where standard remedies are harder to access, having some on hand has genuine practical value. A gallon jug of white vinegar costs under $5. Apple cider vinegar costs slightly more. Both store essentially indefinitely. Buy 2 to 4 gallons of each. The storage space required is minimal, the cost is negligible, and the utility in both food preservation and household sanitation during a disruption is real. 13. Multivitamins. When dietary variety narrows, which it always does during a sustained supply disruption, nutritional gaps open up. Living primarily on rice, beans, oats, and canned protein for weeks or months will sustain your caloric needs, but may leave you short on specific vitamins and minerals that are easier to obtain through fresh produce. Vitamin C is the classic example. Fresh fruits and vegetables are among the first food categories to become scarce during supply disruptions because they're perishable and their supply chains are the most vulnerable. Humans cannot synthesize their own vitamin C. Without adequate intake, the effects of deficiency begin to appear within weeks in the form of fatigue, impaired immune function, and delayed wound healing. A 3 to 6 month supply of basic multivitamins costs under $30 for most households. It takes up almost no space. It serves as a nutritional insurance policy against the dietary narrowing that is nearly inevitable in a prolonged disruption. This is especially important for households with children, pregnant women, or elderly family members whose nutritional needs are more specific and less forgiving of gaps. Before we continue, a quick pause. If you've made it this far and this content is genuinely helping you think through your household preparedness, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe for ongoing updates as the Iran situation develops, and share this with family members or friends who you think could benefit from thinking through this calmly. Your support is what allows this channel to keep putting out useful, practical content when it matters. 14. Matches, lighters, and fire-starting supplies. This isn't food, but it belongs on any honest discussion of what you need when fuel supply chains are disrupted. Your food storage means very little if you cannot cook it. When fuel costs spike dramatically, which happens almost immediately when Middle East conflict disrupts oil supply, people burn through their existing fuel reserves faster than normal because they're cooking more at home. Propane tanks run out, lighters run out, matches run out. The ability to reliably start a fire for cooking becomes genuinely important. Waterproof matches are inexpensive and store indefinitely. Butane lighters are cheap in bulk. Fire-starting cubes or similar products extend your cooking capability if propane or natural gas becomes unavailable. This is a $20 to $30 investment that could be the difference between cooked meals and cold ones. 15. water filtration or purification supplies. Every conversation about food preparedness should also address water. You need approximately 2 liters of water per person per day for basic hydration. Add cooking and basic sanitation, and that figure rises to 4 to 6 liters per person per day. Municipal water systems are generally resilient, but conflict-related infrastructure strain, power grid disruptions, or contamination events can interrupt water service. Having the ability to purify water from alternative sources, a stream, a rain barrel, a pond, removes a critical vulnerability. Water purification tablets are inexpensive and store for years. A quality water filter can process thousands of gallons before needing replacement. These items are widely available at outdoor sporting goods stores and online retailers. They're not glamorous, and you may never need them, but in the specific scenario we're discussing, having them is an insurance policy worth far more than its cost. How to move through this list practically. The goal here is not to overwhelm you or send you running to the store in a panic state. The goal is to give you enough information to make calm, sequential, prioritized decisions about how to strengthen your household's food security over the next 24 to 48 hours. Here's a simple, prioritized sequence. If you can only spend $20 tonight, buy rice and dry beans. That combination will provide your household with 2 to 3 weeks of caloric sustenance. That's genuinely better preparedness than approximately 90% of American households who currently maintain only 3 to 5 days of food at home. If you can spend $50, add cooking oil and canned protein to that list. Now you have real nutritional variety and cooking capability for a month or more. If you have 100 to 150 to allocate, fill in peanut butter, oats, sugar, and salt. Now you have a genuinely comprehensive foundation that covers calories, protein, fat, and basic food preservation for an extended period. If you can spend $200 to $400, work through the complete list over 1 or 2 shopping trips, and you'll have months of food security with genuine nutritional variety. Understanding the timeline in grocery stores. It's worth understanding precisely why speed matters here, because it's not intuitive unless you've seen the pattern play out before. In the first 1 to 6 hours after a significant military escalation headline breaks, most people are still in a watchful waiting posture. They're monitoring the news, hoping the situation stabilizes, and not yet taking action. During this window, store shelves are fully stocked, prices haven't moved. This is the ideal time to act. Between hours 6 and 24, social media amplifies the story rapidly. More people begin discussing the possibility of stocking up. The first wave of buyers arrives at stores. This first wave typically goes for water, bread, and fresh milk, the instinctive items that Americans reach for during any disruption. The more strategic items, rice, beans, cooking oil, are still largely available because most people haven't thought through the specific dynamics yet. Between 24 and 48 hours, the second, larger wave of buyers arrives. Now people are buying more broadly and less selectively. Rice begins disappearing, canned goods get cleared section by section, stores begin placing quantity limits on high-demand items, prices on some items start to move. By 48 to 72 hours, stores in many regions are operating with visibly depleted shelves in key categories. Restocking is slower than normal because supply chains are already beginning to feel the strain. People who waited are paying significantly more for whatever is available and finding limited selection. That is the pattern. It has repeated with remarkable consistency across 50 years of documented supply disruptions. The difference between the people who eat well during a disruption and the people who scramble is usually measured in hours, not days. A final word on mindset. Preparedness and panic are not the same thing, and it's worth being clear about that distinction. Buying 3 months of staple foods during a window of genuine geopolitical risk is not hoarding. It's not irrational fear. It's the same logic that leads people to maintain a first aid kit, even though most days nothing goes wrong, or to keep a spare tire in the car, even though most drives are uneventful. The households that historically navigate supply disruptions best are those that made calm, methodical decisions before the disruption peaked. They didn't empty shelves in a single panic trip. They bought what their household realistically needed, stored it sensibly, and then monitored the situation without anxiety because they had addressed the practical concern. That's the position this information is designed to help you reach. The 15 categories covered here: rice, cooking oil, canned protein, dry beans, sugar, peanut butter, oats, salt, coffee and tea, honey, powdered milk, vinegar, multivitamins, fire starting supplies, and water filtration, represent a comprehensive, practical foundation built on documented patterns from real historical conflicts.